Welcome back. We are in the process of learning phenomenological research methods. In our previous video, we talked about phenomenological analysis, data analysis, and we talked about whole part, whole analysis. This analysis is conducted no matter what approach of phenomenological research design you adopt. Now in today's video, I'm going to talk about another important template that a phenomenologist can use when they are analyzing their phenomenological materials. It's very important, and I want to emphasize it again, that to do a phenomenological analysis, we need a very rich phenomenological data. Oftentimes, I've seen when I read the transcript, the data does not seem to have capture those lived experiences. And when the data is not rich, contextual, detailed, capturing the lived experiences, it is very hard to conduct a phenomenological analysis. So the first prerequisite for a good phenomenological analysis is you must have a rich, detailed data related to the phenomenon that you are investigating. So when you are planning your interview or observation or document analysis, any phenomenological materials that you are gathering, make sure to collect a very rich experiential data, because if that is not that prerequisite is not fulfilled, it will be very hard to conduct a phenomenological analysis on the data. So now let's switch gears and talk about this method. This method was developed by Max Manen, and we call this method existential of a lived experience. Existentials of a lived experience. What does it mean? What is existentials here? Manen refers existentials something which is common to all human phenomena. So the template that we are going to learn, it applies to any human experience, and that is why he calls it existentials of a lived experience. This is existential, call it existentials, because it also shapes our reality and the meanings that we create from these lived experiences. And that's why it is called existentials, because it is common to all human experience, and this existentials kind of shapes our reality that we experience in our day-to-day life. So what are some existentials? So he talked about 5 existentials. What are those? The first existential he talks about is lived self-other. So this is the first template that when you are looking at your data, you can focus, you can use this template to analyze the data, to look into the data, to reflect on these questions related to this template, which is lived self-other. The second on this template is lived body. The third one is lived space. The fourth one is lived things. And finally, the fifth one is lived time or temporality. So in this existentials, he talks about these 5 elements that can help you when you are analyzing your data to get underneath the meanings of those experiences. The first one is lived self-other. The second one is lived body, lived space, lived things, and finally the fifth one is lived time. So we are going to study all these 5 existentials to learn how to analyze the data, the experiential lived data that we have collected. And all these 5 will help us to explore meanings, structure. This existential will help us understand what are the structures of the meanings, what are the structures, what are the core structures on the lived experiences of the people who have shared their experience. So this will help us experience the meaning and the structure underlying those meanings. And this is what the purpose of a phenomenological study is, to understand what are some core core structures of the meanings of these lived experiences. So we are going to learn all these 5 elements to help us, that will help us in our data analysis process. So now let's start with the first element. We call it lived self-other. Now, the first existential, lived self-other, what it refers to is how I experience as an individual. How do I experience self? How do I experience others related to the phenomenon that I'm investigating? So lived self-other dimension, or the first existential, help us understand how our research participants are living this phenomenon through self and the relationship from self to others. So you're focusing on, I could draw like this. If this is self, and then obviously we are surrounded by people around us. So it could be others, other people around us. So the first of all, how self is experienced and how others are experienced by the self. So there are 2 questions we are exploring here. How self is experienced. How self is experienced related to the phenomenon that I am investigating. So how self is experienced. The other question that I said previously, how other or others are experienced. Again, related to the phenomenon that we are investigating. Finally, related to the same theme of how self is experienced and how others are experienced related to the phenomenon, how self and other are interconnected. Remember our conversation on intentionality? Same idea here. When I'm looking at the data that I am analyzing, I'm looking at these experiences that my participant has shared. And what I'm asking myself is how this person whose experience that we are exploring, how the self of the research participant is experiencing this phenomenon, how others are being experienced related to the phenomenon that this person is experiencing, how my research participant is experiencing connectedness with people around himself, herself. So those are the questions that I'm asking myself when I'm reading the data, when I'm analyzing, when I'm doing line-by-line coding or group coding, whether I'm doing whole analysis. I'm asking, reflecting on this question. This is very important. So I am reflecting on these questions when I am analyzing the data. Another related to the same theme is also about subject-object relations, how subject-object relations are constituted, how subject-object relations are constituted. Again, I'm focusing on lived self-other dimension. So when I'm reading the data, obviously the subject here is the research participant. The object could be a person here, and then I'm focusing on this relationship. How this relationship is being constituted? What might be some factors, some variables which are implicated here when we think about this subject-object relations related to the phenomenon that I'm investigating. And finally, when we think about lived self-other, we also think about online versus in-person. Because the way we relate, the way we experience ourselves in an online medium may not necessarily be the same when we are having in-person meeting. The way we experience in-person, and in today's life, you see that our life is so much now intertwined with technology that I am, interacting, sharing my life on social media, or I'm on a video conferencing platform, having a meeting with my colleagues and all that. So our life, our relationality, the lived self-other experience is also nowadays has an important component of online in-person. So all these questions I'm going to reflect when I'm thinking about lived self-other dimension, the first existential that we are exploring here. So when you are looking at the data, ask yourself all these questions, and that will help you to get deeper into the meanings, deeper into the dynamics which are playing out in these relationships between the research participant and the people around the research participants. Now let's take another example to elaborate it even further. I'm taking the same example I have been taking in the previous videos as well. I think it helps us, it makes it more consistent. So let's take the same example I have been taking. And that example is lived experiences of Black women faculty members in academia. Lived experiences of Black women faculty members in academia. So let's say this is a phenomenological study, and I'm trying to explore the lived experiences of this population. So let's focus on, let's say I have already conducted my interviews, I have the data with me, I have interview transcripts, now I'm going through the data and I'm trying to code and analyze the data. So the first existential that we discussed is lived self-other. Now think about a Black woman self-other relationality in the context of this topic. So obviously it is related to the university campus, their academic experience. So in terms of self, obviously self is the person themselves, and the other could be colleague, which is fellow instructors, professors, and then students, and administration, and maybe some other stakeholders as well here. So this could be some of the relationality, self-other, that you want to explore. How Black women faculty members experience self. How Black women faculty members experience their colleagues. How Black women faculty members experience their students. So when you look at the data, you will get more deeper meanings and understanding of the relationality, intentionality, which is there in the data. So the relational dynamics can help you understand so many different things. And I'm just thinking here hypothetically. So let's say when I'm looking at the data, these questions focused on self-other, lived self-other, can help me understand. Maybe the one thing that I might notice is how Black women faculty members are navigating institutional culture, and maybe I'm just hypothetically talking. This is not an actual study that I'm referring to, but I'm hypothesizing that maybe the data might say that there were some relational tension. So this might be a theme which is emerging from the data, relational tension between the Black women faculty and the predominantly white faculty in the department. Maybe a sub-theme of isolation, where these faculty members experience feeling isolated in their department. The feeling of invisibility, how these women are experiencing invisibility in their department, where they feel like they don't exist. They are there, but nobody cares. So those kind of experiences. When I look at the data from this lens, I might also come up with things like the power dynamics in the department too. Power dynamics, the office politics, the power dynamics. Now in department, the relationship between colleagues, students, administration. So all the power dynamics, how these power dynamics are playing out, this template can help me go deeper into those and find some more findings around that. I might also come up with this template. It can help me understand how they are taking care of themselves, like how they are self-care, what Black women faculty members do to take care of themselves, how they manage the stress, the anxiety that they experience in the form of isolation, invisibility, or a relational tension, and what they do to overcome those. This can help me understand, like what we talked about previously, is online versus offline or in person, how these Black women faculty members are experiencing the experience of self and other in the context of when they are teaching classes which are completely online, or when they are teaching classes which have a component of offline and online, like synchronous Zoom meetings, and also classes which are completely in person, or some classes which are hybrid in model. So how they experience self as well as their relationship with students in such classes. So these are all possible things which may come up when you look at the data, analyze the data, and look at this template, the existential of lived self-other. No matter what human experience you are exploring, this is always going to be part of that exploration, part of that human experience, which is self-other, how I'm experiencing self and how I'm experiencing other people in my relationship around them. So this template can help you look at the data, develop some deeper meanings in those data, and understand the structures in those meanings that the participant have shared. Now let's summarize. So in this method, we learned about how to focus on lived self-other dimension of an existential of a lived human experience. And this can help us to go deeper and analyze our data more deeply, understanding it in its various contexts, and also understanding in more granular, richer, contextual manner. I hope this helped you. In our next video, I'm going to talk about the next existential, which is lived body. I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.